Society has a particular way of dealing with people it has already decided are beyond saving. It looks away. It crosses the street. It pulls children a little closer when certain people walk past. It builds invisible walls so high and so thick that the person on the other side eventually stops trying to climb them. They simply become part of the scenery. A fixture. A warning. Something to avoid rather than someone to know. This is the story of a man the whole city had already written off. His name was Daniel. He had spent 11 years inside a prison for a crime that was real. He never pretended otherwise. He had made a terrible choice at 22 when he was desperate and young and had run out of options. He could see he had served his time fully, without complaint, and the morning they opened those gates and handed him a plastic bag with everything he owned, which wasn't much, he walked out into a world that had absolutely no interest in welcoming him back. No job would take his application past the first page. No landlord would rent to him. His family had moved on in the complicated, quiet way families do when someone has been gone too long. He had a name, a face, and a record that followed him everywhere, like a shadow he couldn't outrun. Daniel had learned to protect himself the only way he knew how, by becoming someone people didn't want to get close to. He spoke in short, clipped sentences that discouraged conversation. He sat at the back of every room. He ate alone. He wore his hardness like armor because softness had never done him any favors, and he had long since stopped expecting it to. The city saw exactly what he wanted them to see, a man to be avoided, and they obliged. Every single day they obliged. Until one Tuesday morning, outside a small bakery on the corner of Elm Street, when a woman looked at him, really looked at him, and didn't look away. Her name was Miriam. She was 41, a social worker who had spent 20 years watching people fall through cracks that the system pretended didn't exist. She had seen enough broken people to recognize the specific way a person carries themselves when they have been discarded. The particular set of the shoulders, the careful blankness of the eyes, the invisible sign that reads, "Do not approach," that most people unconsciously obey. She had seen it 100 times, but something about Daniel that morning stopped her feet. Maybe it was the way he watched the bakery window, not hungrily, but carefully. Like a man who had long ago made peace with the fact that warm things were not for him. She walked over. She said, "Good morning." And Daniel looked at her like she had spoken in a foreign language. Miriam came back the next morning. And the one after that, she didn't push. She didn't pry. She didn't arrive with a program or a pamphlet or a plan to fix him. She just showed up. Sometimes she brought 2 coffees. Sometimes she sat in silence beside him for 20 minutes before walking away. Daniel watched her with the careful, suspicious eyes of a man who had learned that kindness always comes with a cost. He waited for the angle, for the ask, or the moment she would reveal what she actually wanted. It never came. 3 weeks in, he said his first real sentence to her. Not a deflection, not a warning, but an actual sentence. He said, "I don't understand why you keep coming back." And Miriam looked at him and said, "Because you're still here." And that means something, whether you believe it or not. It happened on a rainy Thursday, 4 months after that first good morning. Daniel was sitting on their usual bench when Miriam arrived to find him with his head in his hands. He had been turned down for another job, the 15th rejection in as many weeks. He hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. What Miriam saw in Daniel was not a project, not a charity case, not a redemption story she could feel good about later. She saw a man who had made one terrible decision in a lifetime of difficult ones and had been paying for it every single day since, in ways the law had never officially counted. She saw the intelligence behind the guardedness, the humor that occasionally slipped out before he caught it and put it away again. The way he noticed things, small things. The old woman struggling with her grocery bag, the child who dropped his toy, the stray cat that came to the same corner every morning. He was paying attention to the world in a way that most people who felt fully part of it never bothered to. She saw someone who had never been truly seen, and she decided that was going to change. But he talked, really talked. For 2 hours he told her things he had never said out loud. About the night that changed everything. About the shame that had never left. About the version of himself he had imagined becoming before life had other ideas. Miriam listened to every single word. And when he finally went quiet, she said, "That man you described, the one you were going to be, he's not gone, Daniel. He's been waiting. Right here, this whole time." Daniel got a job 6 months later. A small hardware store whose owner, a gruff retired carpenter, had done his own time 40 years ago and made it his quiet mission to give chances to people the world had stopped giving chances to. It wasn't much, but it was something, and something after nothing felt like everything. He still sat on the same bench sometimes, but now he sat there differently. Not hiding, not armoring, just resting. Miriam still came by when she could. They still drank their coffees in the comfortable silence they had built together from nothing. And one morning, Daniel said something he had never said to anyone. He said, "Thank you. Not for the coffee, not for the job lead, for stopping, for looking, for coming back when there was absolutely no logical reason to." Miriam just smiled and said, "There was every reason. I just had to see you first." Story. The people the world has decided are beyond saving. They are not beyond saving. They are beyond being seen. And those are two very different things. You don't need a program or a plan or a professional qualification to change someone's life. Sometimes, all it takes is stopping, looking, saying good morning like you mean it, coming back when you said you would, treating someone like they are still a person when the entire world has decided they are not. You will never know the full story of the people you pass every day. The man on the corner, the woman who flinches when spoken to, the person whose eyes carry something heavy you can't quite name. They all have a story. They all have a version of themselves they once believed in,